So before I get into the unboxing, I really want to just take a second and give a shout out to Roman from Roman Props. Roman was super kind and helpful and knowledgeable with everything that I needed. I reached out with a question about my order, and he was super helpful and actually customized it for me, which I will get into in a little bit. But yeah, I just want to say that I had a fantastic customer service experience with Roman, which I didn't expect any less because he has a stellar reputation as far as his customer service goes, and as far as the quality and accuracy of his hilts go. So I just wanted to say that, and with that out of the way, I wanted to speak a little bit about the V2 before I open it. The V2 is Luke's lightsaber from Return of the Jedi, and it's actually the lightsaber that Luke uses most of the time during that film. So in the film, Luke uses several different lightsabers. He uses the Hero, which we also call V1 for shorthand. He uses the V2. He uses the V3. And then he also uses a number of resin or rubber casts of the V3, which were for certain stunts with, like when he was jumping on Jabba's sail barge, and that was on his belt because they needed something a little less heavy. They made a metal cast of the V3, and that was what became the Yuma. And the Yuma was actually modified and became the, I see you have constructed a new lightsaber hilt, and then that hilt became the Hero, or the V1. So it kind of goes full circle. So we started with the V1 and we ended with the V1. The V2 and the V3 were both stunt props from Obi-Wan from New Hope. The story goes that they got to the set in Tunisia to film Jabba's sail barge scene, and somebody had dropped the ball and forgot that Luke would need a new lightsaber to go along with his new hand, right? He lost the Graflex that he'd been using up to this point, and somebody just hadn't thought about the fact that they would need that before filming. So a quick run to the prop archives, and out come two of Alec Guinness's stunt props, so ones that he would have used for practice or dueling. And these were the motorized stunts, so they had the emitters that would spin with the blade with the reflective tape on it, and the battery pack that would go up in your sleeve. And so the V2 was basically gutted. They took the blade off of that, or cut it off, and that became Luke's main belt hanger for a bigger part of that film. That's also the hilt that Luke catches when R2 shoots it out of his dome and Luke catches it. R2 does not actually have that in his dome, though. When the dome opens up and the hilt pops out, that's a resin cast. But the V2 is what he uses for most of the movie, as far as for the belt hanger, the hero of the movie. In the Emperor's throne room scene, when Vader hands the lightsaber to Luke's lightsaber to the Emperor takes the lightsaber, looks at it, and, you know, ah yes, a Jedi's weapon, and puts it on his throne, on the arm of the armchair. And we get a couple close shots of him kind of patting with his hand. That's also all the V2. And then the V3 was another Obi-Wan stunt prop, and the V3 was used as basically Luke's dueling saber for that film. So they repurposed it, and that was what he uses for the duel with Darth Vader at the end of the film. And that's pretty much the only use that it has. That's certainly where it gets the biggest part of its screen time. And then they needed another hilt for when Luke is on Jabba's sail barge cutting down the henchmen, and something with a blade that wasn't quite so long that wouldn't smack the henchman that he was supposed to be cutting down, right? So they had the Yuma created, which was a metal cast of the V3, and it had a short blade about that long attached so that the VFX people could, you know, put a blade in post. And it was a short blade so that when Hamill would swing it at the extras that were playing these henchmen, the VFX people could edit it in to look like the blade was going through them or hitting them or whatever, but they weren't actually being struck by a metal rod every time. So that was what that was for, and that was pretty much the only time that that was used in the film as of the Yuma. And then toward the end of the film, when Luke surrenders to the Imperial officer on Endor, and that officer delivers him to Vader, the officer is holding Luke's lightsaber in his hand when he approaches with Luke to Vader, and the lightsaber he's holding in his hand is the V2. But then when he hands it to Vader, Vader takes it and looks it over. That is a completely different saber. We only see it in that one scene, and we call it the "I see you have constructed a new lightsaber." And the reason, this is a theory really, but the reason that they did that was because Vader takes the hilt and he says, "I see you have constructed a new lightsaber," but the V2 looks very old, very weathered and beaten up, so it wouldn't really make a lot of sense for a really old, beaten up hilt to be what the camera zooms in on for the hilt's close-up of Luke's new lightsaber, especially when that's in the script. So the theory is that they took the Yuma, which was the one with the short blade that they had used for Jabba's henchman, and this was a new metal cast that they had made of the V3. And so they took the Yuma and they polished it up, removed a lot of the dirty darkness, the weathering that they had put on it to make it look kind of like the V2 and V3. And they gave it a new paint job and dressed it up pretty much like the hero, almost like the hero, missing a couple details. And that is what you see in Vader's hands when he's spinning it over. And then finally, then the Yuma, which became the "I see you've constructed a new lightsaber," is modified one more time. That's after all of the primary shooting has been done, because they wanted to get a scene of Luke building this new lightsaber. It didn't end up making it into the movie, but it's on the Blu-ray, it's on Disney+. You can find it on YouTube, of Luke in the cave with the lightsaber that he's building. And one of the things that you notice that really stands out is that the lightsaber has red and green arrows and they blink. And that is the same, that is the Yuma. That's what the Yuma became. So the Yuma became the saber that Vader holds in the scene when he's inspecting Luke's new lightsaber, and they made a couple more modifications to that and made it the cave scene lightsaber, which is what we know as the hero. The modifications that were made, they added the red and green arrows, and then they also modified the control box a little bit so that it could hold the clamp card and the reveal board and all of that. So I'll go over that in a little more depth in a future video when I'm comparing the V2 and the hero, and can really show some of those differences side by side. But that's really the sort of background knowledge that will help you get the most out of this video. Lucasfilm has always portrayed the hero as Luke's official lightsaber, right? That's what was on most of the toys. Sometimes it was the V3, because that made a lot of rounds at exhibitions and things. But never really the V2. Primarily the hero, though, was and then also in The Last Jedi, that really solidified the hero's canon status because they reused the hero design. The Last Jedi prop is a little different. It's more idealized and thinner than the regular hero from Return of the Jedi, but there's no question that it's based on the hero. And then the same thing happened when they did The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. Both of those are also based on the hero. So that is certainly what Lucasfilm is now considering Luke's canon prop. So with some of that background knowledge in mind, I'm going to go ahead and start this unboxing and then pull out the V2 and show off what this hilt from Roman looks like. Alright, so this is the box that the hilt came in from Roman. I've gone ahead and already cut the tape on this and made sure that there won't be anything sort of impeding the unboxing process. So you'll open it up like that, right? And I'll turn this around, the lid opens up, and then you've got these two foam inserts to kind of keep this from sliding around. Setting that aside. This is the hilt, and I mean, you can already tell this is really, really heavy. The steel V2 is different from other V2s because it is steel. So the weight to it is like something you'd expect from like, a Mark I, which is like the Obi-Wan Episode 4, which is pretty much all steel, or like an Anti-Flex, something that's really heavy, right? So you've got this sort of bubble-wrapped outer layer, and then you've got this box here. So I'll go ahead and kind of push this through. So this is crazy because this box looks really tiny compared to the other box. I think it's just absolutely wild that this much weight is in such a small area. I think the more layers you strip away, the more it becomes obvious. So then opening this up, you've got the hilt wrapped in this like foam stuff. So I'll go ahead and pull that out, cut all the tape on that. All right, so here is the Roman Props Steel V2. You can tell that this has already been stenciled and weathered by Roman very extensively. And I want to basically just go over it from top to bottom, kind of go over some of my first impressions, and talk about some of the modifications that I had to do between pulling out of the box and now, which were very minor, and then talk about some of the specifics of this hilt. So starting at the top, this is basically the same as what you have for the hero, right? The hero has this piece that sticks out of the emitter. And this is, of course, a remnant of the blade that was used for the stunt prop. Down a little further, you've got, of course, the retention screw for the blade or the blade plug. If you pull this out and you pull out the blade plug, you'll actually see that there is a little cup in there for a pixel PCB. So it's made for a recessed blade. And something interesting about the design of this hilt is that cup for the pixel PCB is actually what screws in and threads into the neck. Moving on down, you can see some of Roman's stenciling on the emitter here. And he doesn't use the Trooper Trent stencil. You, of course, can if you want to. You can buy the hilt unweathered, unstenciled, clean, just machine finished. And then you can buy the stencil from Trent, send it off to an installer or someone who specializes in weathering to get that done. But I really like the stenciling that Roman did, which is part of why I went with this instead of using the Trent stencil. The Trent stencil is nice. The Trent stencil is very accurate, but I really like the shapes and edges of the stenciling here. It's kind of a softer stenciling. And then moving down a little further, you've got some weathering on the very bottom of the emitter here, just some darkening there. The upper section of the neck, just above the wind vane, I actually have already ordered some of Trooper Trent's gaffer tape with the adapter to make it look like it's loose, like the real prop. And so that will go there, and that should be there. So it's not there currently, but that is an accuracy modification that I am making. And then the wind vane here is actually what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned that I reached out to Roman and he made a modification for my order. I mentioned that I really wanted, let's see if I can get a little more light here. I really wanted one of the V2s with a bit of a browner neck, and his do come with a combination of black and brown paint on the neck here. But he said he did them all by hand, and so each one would be a little more different. And since I had specifically asked for one with a little more brown, he said that he would, without me even asking to, he said that he would go through them and find the most brown one and put that in my order. So I'm really happy with the shade of brown here. When you shine a light on it, it really does look brown, but then without light, shining on it, it doesn't look quite so brown. See if I can kind of block that. See, without the light, it darkens up really well. Going down a little further, You've got a bit of stenciling on the upper section of the grenade section, or the ribs here. The actual rings themselves have some black weathering on each ring, and then some more stenciling here. On the clamp section, you have one of Roman's famous clamps. His Graflex clamps are well known for being very accurate. In the clamp is a Sloth Furnace card. I'll go ahead and pull that out and talk a little bit about some of the modification that I had to do. So this is the card that comes with it. It says Roman Props / Sloth Furnace V2, and then the other side is the Empire Strikes Back card. So when I actually received the hilt, the clamp itself was loose. Even with the lever in the locked, tightened position, the clamp would move around on the hilt, and it would actually rotate as well. So the reason that I had to do some modification was because obviously that wasn't secure. You want it to really feel like one secure piece. So I took off the clamp and I tightened it one rotation, which solved the problem. But then I had a problem where the clamp card was then too thick to fit in the when the lever was tightened down. So I just filed down each side of the card just a little bit until it was properly sized and would fit in there. So now it goes right in, and then I can tighten down the lever with no problem. Looking at the clamp a little more closely, there's some acid aging on there, and some darkening of the actual Graflex logo, some scratching, general weathering. You actually have, this is a feature of the V2, you've got the missing, let's see if I can get it to show, you've got the missing clamp bar there. So it's on one side, but not on the other. Of course, that's accurate as well. And then moving down a little further, you've got the cone knob and the boot stud. These are both from Roman. And then you have the pommel. And the pommel is the only piece that is aluminum, but the color difference between the booster and the pommel is pretty good. Looking at some reference photos of the V2, there is a color difference there. So I don't think that that is an inaccuracy, so to speak. Then you've got the D-ring here. And something to note about the pommel is that it's actually held in by this retention screw here and by this cone knob here. So you take both of those out and it doesn't screw off, it actually just comes out like that. And then the booster is screwed onto the clamp cage, which is attached to the grip section, and then the grip all the way up through the upper neck is one piece, and then the emitter is its own piece. Actually, looking at this now, I need to go ahead and change the clamp orientation a little bit. The clamp should be oriented about like this. The edge of this should line up with the edge of the box there. So I'll go ahead and line that up and then tighten it down. Moving on, the bottom of the pommel has some nicks and dings, some weathering, and if I remember correctly, these are actually cleverly disguised sound vents. So these nicks and dings and scratches are actually the sound venting, which I think is very, very cool. There are also some other accuracy things to note, like this machining mark here, which is present on the V2. Roman has added that as well. You've got the nicks here on the bottom of this pommel cube. And then you also have some, slight aluminum black aging between each pommel cube. Maybe it's not an aluminum black, but it looks like that to me. One thing I really like about this is that the entire hilt is coated with a matte clear spray paint. It really stands out to me. I really enjoy that. You know, you've got a lot of similarities to the Hero and to the V3, but the V2, especially with this weathering here and here and all of that, it's definitely its own unique hilt, which really just makes it stand out. And again, because this is the one that Luke uses for most of the film, it's certainly a fan favorite. It's certainly one of my favorites. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in and checking out the video. I really enjoy doing these unboxings, as well as doing, you know, brief overviews of the history of these hilts and the lineage of the props from one to the other. I hope to do some more like that in the future, where I do some direct comparisons between some of the props and show some of the differences between the lineage of some of these props and how one became the next and so on. But thanks again for tuning in and checking out the video. As always, of course, like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, may the Force be with you.